All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I recorded before a hangout where we were talking about the topic that you see here, but apparently I didn't. I actually put it on record after I thought I had stopped recording. So there's a lot of stuff I said, and all of that stuff was not recorded. So let's go back into it. First, from scripture, I always start off with scripture. Psalms 14 says, "Deliver me out of the mire, and let me not sink. Let me be delivered from them that hate me, out of the deep waters. Let not the water flood overflow me. Let not the deep swallow me up. Let not the pit shut her mouth against me." Whatever's happening to you today, I hope you're not overcome by the circumstances if they're negative. All right? That's my wish for you. That's what that scripture is about. Shout out to each and every one of you. We having here a flash hangout. A flash hangout. It's kind of a pun on Flashpoint. I'm going to talk to you why I think Flashpoint is important for the DCEU's future. Why my suggestion, just my suggestion, is that we have Flashpoint. Okay, I saw a whole bunch of you guys come up online. I'm sorry about the dummy moment. If you want to join this hangout, I'm going to put the link in the comment section. But basically what we're going to talk about is the future DCEU movies. Now, we know already Aquaman's in the future. That's later on this year. Shazam is after. We will have Wonder Woman 2, I do believe, also next year with Shazam. But in 2020, we're supposed to have a Flash movie, right? And we even have directors for it. And in San Diego Comic-Con last year, we heard about Flashpoint. And I do believe strongly, people talking about Man of Steel 2 as the next movie, or what else did they talk about? Green Lantern Corps or Cyborg. But I really believe Flashpoint should be the next movie. And I'll give you a reason. Now, the DCEU, we've heard talk about movies not connected with the DCEU, such as the Joker movie, you know, and so on. We're going to have a couple standalone movies, but those are in the DCEU. But the Joker movie they're talking about is kind of outside of the DCEU. Why I think Flashpoint works instead of not Crisis on Infinite Earths, but Flashpoint, is because Flashpoint opens the door and it's a natural lead off to our introduction of the Flash in Justice League. That's a natural lead off into exploration of the multiverse. People would think of Flashpoint as probably a reset point or reboot point for the Justice League, like in terms of rebooting Batman or whatever. But, or not necessarily rebooting Batman, but maybe giving us earlier stories of Batman, whatever. But I see Flashpoint as an opportunity to introduce us to the multiverse. As you already know, the multiverse has been introduced in a kind of way, not really a multiverse, but moving through dimensions has been introduced to us in the DCEU since Man of Steel. Clark came from another dimension using the Phantom Drive. We saw Zod and they go into the Phantom Drive. That's another dimension. So we're going past dimensions. And remember, multiverses have to do with moving from one dimension to the next. We're introduced to that again in BVS, where the Flash is coming from a foreseeable future, some alternative reality, where he speaks to Bruce. That again shows us that it could be possibly a multiverse, or at least a change in the timeline. Now, what Flashpoint can do is it can address other universes. Why not Crisis on Infinite Earths? Because you'll have to get a whole bunch of cast and alternate realities if you're doing Crisis on Infinite Earths, which makes it limited to how many actors are in it. Whereas Flashpoint, you can present a possible different reality and therefore possible different multiverses. And as such, you don't have to use an exorbitant cast to do that. Now, here's the interesting thing about that as well. Flashpoint shows you that there are other multiverses. And as a result of that, the DCEU is now extended beyond just the continuity that it has. Now you can think of other movies outside of your general continuity, and you can tell stories, and directors are free to tell whatever stories they want. So I think Flashpoint is really the way to go. Now, we know there are 2 directors being courted into doing this movie. I don't know how it will pan out. I don't know. You know, they're known for Spider-Man Homecoming. They're known for this movie that's coming out very, very soon, which will be a rated R movie. They're known for those 2 movies. The rated R movie that's coming out is actually from New Line. So it's a lower budget, but it's Warner Brothers, and we'll see how that performs. But at the end of the day, it's really about being able for the directors Flashpoint should open the door to multiverses and therefore allow directors to tell other stories that don't have anything to do with the continuity of the particular continuity that is going on right now in the DCEU. So that's why I think Flashpoint is the most organic movie to follow up. And it will follow up from Justice League, the Flash that we see in Justice League. He goes through the timeline, may enter into other dimensions, other universes, etc., which would be really cool. That's why I think Flashpoint should be utilized. There are many ways to go about doing what they want, breaking continuity, but I think that's one of the ways you could do it. So after Aquaman, I think we're not really flowing with continuity. We're going back into time with Wonder Woman. So some event that happened before Justice League, but you still kind of have to think about the continuity issues. But once you do Flashpoint, you don't have to worry about continuity because you can always do an alternative dimensional story of Wonder Woman, alternative dimensional story of Aquaman, and so on. It's endless possibilities. Now, there's another interesting thing about that. When you establish a multiverse, like it started to talk about multiverses when we saw in Marvel, when we did Doctor Strange, when Doctor Strange was done, then you had that option now for alternate dimensions, alternate realities. We saw Thor come through alternate reality to that one. Also, if I'm not mistaken, on the CW, we have alternate realities. We have a multiverse because Flash went into Supergirl's reality. So it opens up the door for all of that. We could have Marvel, DC crossovers because now we have this multiverse. We could have DC crossover with something that has nothing to do with comic books, like Star Wars. Well, Star Wars is a comic book movie, but you could actually cross over with that once it's established that there's some kind of multiverse thing going on with Star Wars. So what I'm saying is, by being able to have a multiverse, you can break with continuity. You could reset a franchise. You could also do crossovers with other franchises. And just before people say, well, Marvel characters, man, there's this, that, and the other. The beauty of a crossover is this. It's kind of like Man of Steel showed possibilities. Superman was known a certain way, but when you put Superman in a certain environment, you get a different sort of dynamic. And I think Man of Steel brought Superman into our world, into a sort of sci-fi world. And that's what makes it so cool. Whereas if you look at, Christopher Reeve's Superman was in a different world, more fantasy-like world. Same thing with Marvel characters. You could take the same Marvel character from the Marvel franchise and you can fit them into a different world and you would get them responding in a different kind of way. So I think it's good because now you can take characters in different franchises and actually do a lot more with them. You see different dimensions and different sides of them because you put them in different environments. So, for instance, if you take Spider-Man, who is in a Sony environment, and they've kind of collaborated with Disney, and you put Spider-Man in the MCU, he behaves one way. If you keep him back in his own world, meaning in his world of heroes and villains, he'll behave another way. And that's really what's kind of cool. I mean, you take Spider-Man, you put him, because Spider-Man could go with anybody. He could go with any team. Spider-Man doesn't have to stay with the Avengers. He can go roll with the X-Men. He can roll with, Spider-Man has rolled with the X-Men. Spider-Man has rolled with the Justice League. Spider-Man has rolled with everybody. So you can take Spider-Man and you can move him into crossovers with other things. Spider-Man Transformers. Spider-Man works with anything. So my point being, that's the cool thing about it. And I hope in the future they're looking at these things. And I think Justice League was kind of the foundational block just to see if the DCU could handle something like that. The Flash, and right now Spider-Man Homecoming, they kind of have similar themes kind of going along with them, very, superficially, but still similar themes. For instance, if Flashpoint happens, it's kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming, where you see the Avengers with Spider-Man. You see Spider-Man in the Avengers world. Well, now we'll see the Flash with the Justice League world and also the alternative realities. He's able to cross over and do all kinds of crazy things, which is cool about the Flash. Of course, it's more sci-fi than fantasy, and that's always what I love, the sci-fi aspects. Now, to address, some people may not like this, like John King, etc., but I got to say it. The cool thing about the DCEU and about particularly Superman is that there's actually some truth to everything that's going on, the science fiction. And that's why I said it's science fiction. It's not really science fiction because it becomes a reality in the future. And I talked to you guys about, for instance, electromagnetic fields. When we talk about electromagnetic fields, it goes into all kinds of things, from telepathy all the way up to levitation. I'll give you a good example, very simple. When you look at Superman, Superman comes from Krypton, a world with greater gravitational fields. It has a sun that's not as nutritive, etc. So what happens is Superman has electromagnetic field, which we call its bioelectric aura. And that is what helps him. All of us have electromagnetic fields around us, but his is especially powerful because it comes from a world with lower gravitational, heavier gravitational pull, as well as a weaker sun. A bigger sun, but a weaker sun in terms of supplying nutrients. So he's stronger, and he's also got a stronger electromagnetic field. Now, here's the thing about it. All right, so you guys will understand how feasible this is. If you go up on the moon, it's 1/8 the gravitational field of Earth. But if you jump in the air, you jump up way up in the air. Now, imagine if you could somehow have an upward force that equalizes the gravitational pull, then you would levitate. And that's how Superman can do. He uses electromagnetic field to push against the gravitational pull of Earth. And because Earth's gravitational field is weaker than Krypton, in addition to the fact that he has electromagnetic field around him he can manipulate, he's able to levitate. When he does this and he really presses hard, he can able to expand that field, make it stronger. He can fly. So that's why Superman can fly. That's why he can levitate. Okay. And that's his super strength is, again, because the nutritive power of the sun, yes, but also in addition, which remind you, our bodies also absorb nutrients from the sun. Just so you guys understand, Superman is very much like us. Okay. We absorb nutrients from the sun. And in so doing, we make vitamins and hormones and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So Superman also gets his nutrients from the sun. Yes, he can eat food. He gets nutrients from there. He has lungs. He can breathe, all that kind of thing, just like a human being. But now he's in a more nutritive environment. So that's why Superman's super. He's like a human being in an environment that's more nutritive for him, with a weaker gravitational field, stronger, more nutritive sun. That's what you get. Okay. That's why the Kryptonians can jump so high. They jump so high because if you was on the moon, you do the same thing. Got it? All right. So it's very real. It's very realistic what they're doing and how they explain everything. I love how they explained everything in Man of Steel. I can talk about telepathy so you guys can understand. You know, you saw people communicate with people through dreams, through visions. Telepathy is very simple. Again, everything has to do with electromagnetic fields. We emit signals from our head. We emit alpha, beta, delta, and gamma radiation, okay, from our head. Epsilon 2. And Nikola Tesla was the guy that designed radio waves. Well, at least he harnessed wave arrays to form the radio and so on. And he said there's a transmitter and there's a receiver. And Nikola Tesla also believed in telepathy, but he thought that we could telepath through the ground. Now, here's the cool thing. The Flash is going to be done by these two directors. Hopefully we get all this sci-fi stuff because I want to see how he becomes the Flash. But they're going to use those sort of things. And also Nikola Tesla was struck by lightning and all of that. He absorbed lightning and stuff. We're going to understand, again, these things. Now, always they're playing around, exploring with scientific things. It's called science fiction, but science fiction usually becomes reality later on. And the principles that we see in science fiction become reality. And that's why I was trying to explain to guys like John King and these guys that these things that I'm talking about, telepathy, I talk about the water transmitting, water holds all the information. In fact, when something falls into water, like a flower or whatever, the actual droplets of water, how they interface, they keep on, there's a ripple of the shape of the thing, but also in the water particles actually adopt the shape of the thing that goes inside of them. We know this now. This is a scientific study. All right. Not only that, but water also transmits pheromones, emotions, whatever is in the water. Pheromones tell us come off of a body. If you're afraid, the pheromone will come off. If you feel a certain way, a pheromone will come off. That's how animals know if you're afraid. They know if you're going to attack them, whatever. Not just your body language. It's also the odor you give off. Which again, in Justice League, they talked about smelling fear. The parrot even smell fear. It makes sense. These are scientific things which are true. And that's what I like about WB and the DCEU. They literally use actual things. The Amazons actually existed. You see what I'm saying? Themyscira was an actual place that existed in the world. It still exists in the world. It's in Turkey. And I'm just saying, they use these lores, the Greek myths, the Greek lores, and they take those things, and there's truth in almost everything they say. And that's what I love about it. They do a lot of homework and research, Zack Snyder and company. So that's why I like the DCU. But I'm talking about the future of the DCU now. And I'm saying, when you look at Flashpoint in and of itself, not Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that would call for too many casts and infinite casts. That make no sense. Flashpoint gets us to introduce to the Flash. Flash is the major player here. We could call back to BVS if we need to. We could touch on Justice League, and we can move forward, and we can introduce this multiverse. Because if you even the the animated movie Flashpoint or Flashpoint Paradox, again, highlights these alternate dimensions, these alternate universes, and the timeline. So I'm saying that's what I think should come after, say, for instance, Wonder Woman 2, I think, will be the last one in 2019. I think before Wonder Woman 2 is Shazam, I think. I don't think Flashpoint comes in 2019. I think it comes probably in 2020. So if once they can pull off the scientific, because you know it's about scientific based kind of thing, and show you the possibilities of it becoming reality. That's the cool thing about these things. These things actually become reality later on. People levitating and all that stuff. I know people say, that's craziness. What are you talking about? Well, you know, they trying. They've used machines so people could flow up in the air and levitate and stuff. Now they just need to find a way to get the actual people, how we harness that. And there's a lot I want to talk about that, but I don't want to go into that. That's it. So let's look at the links. If you guys want to talk in the chat section, sure, let me hear your views on what you think should come next with the DCEU. I advocate for Flashpoint. Nobody's up in the chat. Okay, I just saw 2 people come through. They checked out this video. I thought somebody was saying something in there. I guess not. So if there's nobody saying anything extra, that's it for my video for now. I just wanted to put that suggestion in your minds, see what you guys had to say about that. If nobody has anything to say, I will be boogieing out of here. So I hope you guys have a great one. Enjoy your day. Hopefully this records. The other one didn't record. Hopefully this one records. You guys have a good one.